I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 84 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. This meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders. Before we proceed, I simply want to remind members again to be very careful when handling the earpieces, especially when your microphone or your neighbour's microphone is turned on. Earpieces placed too close to a microphone are one of the most common causes of sound feedback, which is extremely harmful to interpreters and causes serious injury. We are joined today by Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard, the Honourable Diane Laboutiere, who will be with us for the first hour, and officials will be with us for the full 2 hours today. Joining the Minister in the first hour, we have Annette Gibbons, Deputy Minister, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and Mario Pelletier, Commissioner of the Canadian Coast Guard. Once statements are done, we will proceed to rounds of questions and answers, and we will begin now hearing from the Minister with her opening statement. When you're ready, Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, dear colleagues. I would like to thank you for having invited me here today to speak to my new portfolio and my priorities as Minister. For me, fisheries is a file that has been at the heart of my priorities since my election in 2015, because in Gaspésie, Île-de-la-Madeleine, it's not only the main occupation of thousands of workers, but is also a major economic engine from our region. It's a rural region surrounded by the Gulf St. Lawrence Seaway, the Gulf of St. Lawrence, and the Baie des Chaleurs. Before beginning, I would like to thank all these men and women who wake up so early every morning and risk their lives on the water to feed their families, stimulate the economy of the country, and exercise their right to fish according to their traditions through treaty rights. Far from being a simple economic exercise, they contribute to our national and cultural fabric in a deeply significant way. I thank them. I also would like to thank the staff of DFO for all the work that they're doing. I'd like to begin today by speaking to my own priorities as Minister. First of all, I want DFO to listen more closely to our coastal communities and to try to better understand their realities when it's time to make decisions linked to fisheries management, to investments in key infrastructure such as small vessel ports and other important issues that require the intervention of DFO. Of course, I'm not saying that we will always make decisions that will please everyone, but we will seek to consult more often, and these decisions will be made in a way to give the concerned sectors enough time to prepare and adapt as required. All of this applies to fishers, processors, environmental groups, indigenous communities, and the marine and scientific sector. Our coastal communities want to be part of the solution. They are our eyes and ears in the field, and I've clearly indicated to my office and the MPO to give them a renewed importance. And I would say that it's also important to speak to science, because in the context of climate change and the warming of the oceans that results, we are going to be in uncharted waters in the years to come. More than ever, it's important to obtain the best possible scientific data to make the most informed decisions.
My third and fourth priorities relate to growing the blue economy and following through on critical steps on reconciliation between Canada and the Indigenous peoples who have called Canada home from time immemorial. Pour moi, Monsieur le Président, les pêches...
Mr. Chair, for me, the fisheries sector is an economic development sector where jobs are created, and Canada, with the longest coastline in the world, it provides a unique opportunity to be seized by taking measures such as the following.
From open net salmon pens and encourage new methods of aquaculture while saving the Pacific salmon from further risk. encourage international partners to open their doors to Canadian seal products so that fish stocks are protected from predation and that Indigenous communities can lead the way on this potentially game-changing industry. Investir dans des technologies.
Invest in innovative infrastructure and technology in the fishing and processing sectors in order to guarantee that Canada will be a world leader and competitive for generations to come. I'd also like to reassert my sincere commitment to work closely with Indigenous partners and First Nations communities in a spirit of reconciliation. This important work will sometimes take time and will involve many difficult and highly emotional conversations. Rest assured that I will always be there to listen to Indigenous voices and guide my department in the correct direction during this significant but difficult journey. Mr. Chair, I would like to say that it's always a pleasure for me to work with you all on studies and important work that you conduct or that you will do in the future.
Particularly look forward to reading your report on the seal and pinniped study once it has been tabled in the House. This is a topic of deep interest to me, and I'm looking forward to seeing the conclusions and recommendations of your report so that we can move forward on these economically under-tapped resources. Sur ce, Monsieur le Président, je vous redonne la parole.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to give you the floor again, and I'm prepared to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Minister, and we'll go right to questions. We'll have Mr. Small up for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my question to the Minister is regarding a marine protected area that was created in our riding near Gaspésie and the American Bank. In 2018, Mr. Chair, the Minister said that establishing this marine protected area would allow the re-establishment of seals in the region. Now, numerous witnesses before this committee have said that seals are overpopulated in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. So I'd like to ask the Minister if seals are overpopulated or if they're in need of re-establishment.
What I can, when I tell, these banks, American banks, is in my riding from, it's my area from New Brunswick to the Magdalen Islands. So this is part of my priorities, is to work. For me, I see this as a new resource. I see this as a resource that can be used, a resource that is a priority. We're going to work together with the fishing sector, with the fishers, with the industry. And it's in order to use these resources. We've invested $700,000 with regards to research recently.
Merci. So, with respect to Bill C-251, which would have developed a framework for the management of seals, does the Minister think that the fishing industry in Gaspésie, Île-de-Madeleine, is against managing seal populations? Did she vote with her constituents, or was there another reason for her voting against that legislation?
Est-ce que vous pouvez répéter, s'il vous plaît?
Could you repeat, please? Could you repeat the question, please?
With respect to the Minister's vote on Bill C-251, did she vote? Does she think she voted the way that the people of Île-de-Madeleine would have wanted her to vote? The bill was to create a framework for management of pinnipeds, seals.
Oui. On doit régler.
We need to work to implement standards to make sure that the seal is a product that is developed further. We need to work with communities. We need to work on this, and we have to find solutions that will be important and solutions that can be worked on in cooperation with the partners in the sector, seal hunters, processors. We want to add some value to this product. There's a lot of work to be done for the marketing in the future.
Thank you for that response. So after 8 years and nearly a 50% increase in employees in the Minister's department, over 750 of which are here in Ottawa, and nearly a 50% increase in budget, does it seem reasonable that the Northern Cod Management Plan was not released until the end of June this year?
Ce que je peux vous dire,
What I can say with regards to cod management, I lived through the moratorium on the cod fishery. I have a village where the entire village was fishers and people who worked in the processing industries, and I know full well the impact that the cod collapse had. There was a restructuring in the 1990s. It was dramatic. We need to have data. That's really important.
Mr. Chair, I'd like the Minister to answer. Does she think that it was reasonable to delay the cod management plan to almost the 1st of July last year?
écoutez,
Well, listen, the cod fishery and information that we received yesterday, we made decisions that were very important, and I'm going to remain cautious with regards to the cod fishery. We will work with partners so that we won't have to face another moratorium. So I know the repercussions of a moratorium on the cod fishery, and I'm going to be extremely cautious in the future so that I won't hinder our communities.
So, yes, given yesterday's news on the fact that cod has been out of the critical zone since 2016, with that tremendous economic opportunity missed in the fishing industry, which they really would have been, loved to have been able to take advantage of, especially last year, where the crab industry was suffering a lot. Why was the limit reference point not changed much earlier than this, given the huge increase in DFO staff and the budget increase? Why has DFO not performed better and acted in a more timely fashion than they have, so that harvesters and plant workers in the processing industry could have taken advantage of a higher quota when groups like the FFAW wanted a 25,000-ton cod quota last year? But it doesn't make sense that all of a sudden you change the lower reference point. Why couldn't it have been done last spring?
écoutez, je tiens à rappeler à mon
I'd like to remind my colleague that I've gone through the devastation that was created in communities linked to the cod moratorium. And as I said, we're going to be careful. We're going to work together with the sector and with organizations, and rest assured that I will not submit the sector to another moratorium. So I'm pleased with the data that was brought forth, and I don't understand that people say that there were problems in the crab industry, but I can tell you that in my area, the crab fishers all fish their quota, their crab quota. Things are going quite well in the crab fishery sector. The goal that I have is to continue to work with the fishing and the processing sector, and to make sure that we will have fisheries in the future for our grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Thank you, Mr. Small. Before I go to Mr. Cormier, I will remind members that once when you're recognised for your questions, the 5 minutes or 6 minutes, whatever it might be, is your time. You can ask questions. You don't necessarily have to wait for an answer, but it's always good to wait for an answer as well, I guess. But the time is yours. I'm not in control of your time once when you start. So we'll go now to Mr. Cormier for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Madam Minister. Welcome and congratulations once again for your nomination as Minister. It was great to see you in my riding this summer. We enjoyed meeting with different groups, and also we had the opportunity to do the tête à mare during the Acadian Festival. Madam Minister, we are neighbors. We share a bay, the Baie des Chaleurs, and as you said earlier, and it's music to my ears to hear you say that you told your civil servants to make sure that they understand the reality in different communities, that they understand the difficulties that we experience on a daily basis in the fisheries sector. Here's my question, and I don't know if you're aware of the challenges that we have. We have a mackerel fishery that is closed. We have a spring herring fishery that is closed, and it was probably we had a very bad season. We have a shrimp fisheries that is going very badly, and we need help for these communities that depend on the fishery sector. People in the communities and fish plants depend on this. Have you asked your civil servants and different other ministers to look at these different files? Because as you know, this can have a devastating impact on our communities. Are you going to do everything in your power to assist these people who deeply depend on these fisheries? Thank you.
Merci,
Thank you to my colleague for his question. And as he was mentioning, it was a pleasure for me to begin my tour following my nomination in New Brunswick to meet industry people in the fishing sector as well as the processing sector. And we know, as I was saying, there's a lot of concerns in the fisheries sector with regards to climate change. And we've seen the latest data coming from science linked to the warming of the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the St. Lawrence Seaway, and that this will have an impact. As I said in my opening statement, we're going to be in choppy and unknown waters in the years to come. And this is why we need to work in cooperation with stakeholders. I'm very sensitive to what's happening in the fisheries sector with regards to people who are working in the industry of processing. I'd say that in the Maritimes, it's probably the same as in my riding. The average salary is $30,000 a year. It's really important to be able to support people who will experience the effects. And so there are many discussions being held with other ministers and colleagues to see what means can be implemented in order to help communities. As I was saying, it's important to work jointly with municipalities, with provincial governments, and federal governments. Thank you.
Merci, Madame la Ministre.
Thank you, Madam Minister. I have so many more questions for you, but since I'm an extraordinary colleague, I'm going to share my time with Bobby Morrissey.
Excuse-moi, Madame. Minister, welcome to the committee. Question, just follow up on the question of my colleague, Mr. Cormier, on what's your expectations on leading into 2024 regarding a mackerel bait fishery for the Gulf region, including Île-de-Madeleine and La Gaspésie.
Merci de cette question.
Thank you. I can tell you that I'm having discussions with the DFO with regards to mackerel and herring. I'm informed that there are studies also that have been done, and we have to have the result of negotiations being held with the U.S. Perhaps the Deputy Minister will be able to provide more information. And as I was mentioning, for me, it will be important because in the discussions that I had with some colleagues and also with the setting was informing me we were more severe in Canada than the U.S. I was informed that in the Atlantic, I was informed of this difference between the U.S. and Canada. But as I was saying, for me, it will be important to continue to work closely with the people in the field to find the most appropriate solutions. But I also have to say that we've seen this with herring in the fall. With regards to the herring fishery, we're not able to catch the quotas that were allocated. Things are not going well in the herring fishery. I see this in my sector, in my region. The mackerel fishery, the number of mackerel has gone down. We don't have a huge or very large mackerel. We have smaller ones. And this is the first time that I see this when we're talking about fishing and processing. Even in the fishery sectors where things are going well, people are very concerned about climate change. And more than ever, we need data. We need data to work jointly together with DFO, but also in order to reestablish trust. So at DFO, between DFO and the different sectors.
We'll now go to Madame Debienne for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you. I also would like to welcome you, Madam Minister. You know, in Quebec, we're very pleased to know that finally we have a Francophone minister, because fisheries in Quebec is, I would say, it's an economic tool, but it's also a cultural sector. And I'm very pleased to have you there, Madam Minister. Now, I'm pleased that Mr. Cormier was able to highlight the issue with regards to mackerel, herring, and shrimp. These fisheries are at risk. I would like to ask you, do you hope to find budgets in order to better measure the stocks in the St. Lawrence, for example? We're oftentimes told that we have no way to measure. We don't have adequate measures for the stocks. Are you able to find a budget for this? Well, what I can tell you is that when we look at the St. Lawrence Seaway and the Gulf, we have the Institut Maurice Lamontagne. They're able to collect scientific data, and they're working together with the fisheries sector. For me, this is a combination of things, people who are working on the water and also scientific data. For research and development with the Institut Maurice Lamontagne. For the shrimp fishery, a report should be provided at the end of October, and we'll be able to see how things are evolving. But it's clear for me, as I was saying, with regards to scientific data, there's work that needs to be continued. We are in uncharted waters. There's a lot of concern. And we also have to consider that, for me, DFO is an economic development department. And I said it, this represents jobs. It's a job creation department with regards to construction, shipyards, people who are working on fleet development, to repair and build boats. It's a huge, there's a huge economic engine here, and we need to consider that this is a renewable resource, and it's also a sector for economic development. Speaking of the economy, there are many fishers, there's a huge socioeconomic activity around the fishing sector. There's a domino effect when there's a closure in the fishery as well. There are many fishers who are facing a void. They don't have any support. They don't qualify for EI. And if there's less resources, there's less plants that are open. So do you have anything to offer these people so that they can dig out of their economic problems? Well, we're trying to work with the people in the sector. I've gone through the moratorium on cod. Programs were implemented at the time, and I know full well the impact of those programs. At the time, I was 30, and I was working in mental health. So I know this full well. I know the perverse effects also that some of the programs had, but for me it will be a collaborative effort. There are other opportunities, whether if we look at the seal industry, I see this as an opportunity. Also, redfish, I see this as an opportunity. Cod is a little bit better. I'm prudently optimistic. And we had the moratorium on ground fish, and so we almost reproduce the same thing with the shrimp industry and what's happening right now in the shrimp industry. For 2 years now, the industry has not been well. So in the news, we've seen different issues with the people who work with algae. Océan de Saveur, they have to go to New Brunswick for to have enough algae. Could you explain why the criteria are not possible in Quebec? It's impossible to meet the criteria. What are the options so that our economy stays in Quebec? Well, all I can tell you is that for me, pulses are a source, an important source, or there's a reproduction in the algae, and as I was saying, we have, well, I can't really talk about a specific file, but with regards to we have different temperature, we have so there's a lot of work that needs to be done for preservation, and this is my objective. Well, there's a variability. It's like in this context, there are some algae that the fishers, even if they want to leave them, it is ready for harvest. Well, my position was quite clear. Are we going to change the law? No. Are we going to preserve what we have? I have a responsibility to preserve algae for generations to come. And I'm very sensitive to what's happening environmentally. And the setting is very sensitive environmentally for fishery and for processing.
6 minutes or less, please. You're on mute.
Thank you very much, Chair. Before my time starts, if I can just acknowledge, please, that the meeting started early today, which meant that I missed the beginning of the minister's presentation to the committee, and I'd like to please add to our next meeting a conversation around ensuring equitable representation from all parties around this table. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, I'll just comment, this won't come off your time, Ms. Barron, but we started the meeting on time. It's actually probably 11:01 when we actually hit the gavel, and there was quorum in the room at that time, so we started right on time, and your time is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The time on my digital clock was not, in fact, at that time. It was 2 minutes prior, which I realize is only 2 minutes, but it's 2 minutes prior. And I realized quorum was there, but there was not equitable representation from all parties. And I do think that's the bigger conversation that needs to be had around meetings being started when there is conservatives and liberals in the room, but not representation from all the parties, in particular when there are two parties only have one person representing. And so I would like to address this at a further meeting, but I did want to point out that there was 2 minutes that were missed as a result of the meeting starting 2 minutes early. But I do have questions for the minister, and I certainly don't want to take away from our time of being able to utilize the minister being here. First of all, Minister, I would like to welcome you and say congratulations on your role. It's a very important one, and I'm sure we are all excited to be able to work with you on the important issues. The first issue that I wanted to ask you about is around Currently, Minister, we undertook a study on science specifically around the CSAS process, and there was a recently peer-reviewed paper that was published and sent your way from UBC and Dalhousie universities talking about the CSAS process and around concerns around the manner in which science is being utilized by decision makers in DFO. And I'm wondering, Minister, if you've had a chance to look at this report and if you will commit to fixing this issue that we are seeing around clear ethical and transparency issues in the decision-making process that often is looking at business interests and undermining science and public interest.
Écoutez,
Thank you for the question. What I'd like to say is that for me, it's going to be important that I mention this. It'll be important to open up discussion to make sure that that DFO will work together with organizations, that the discussions are had, and with academics and environmental groups and Indigenous communities, and with people from the fishing sector and the processing sector to make the best possible decisions. But I can tell you that for all of the partners in the fishing sector, we all have a shared objective to have a sustainable fishing sector. We know the impact that bad management and bad use of the resource can lead to in our rural communities. So I have this openness to work with all the partners and also to work with the committee here. I know that some colleagues have been sitting on the committee for a long time. They've been working for a long time and they've made recommendations. So for me, this is essential work.
Okay, thank you, Minister. I hope that the scientists who submitted this report to you will receive an official response to the report soon. The other question, which I have also brought up in my letter to you recently, is around the Prime Minister's mandate to transition open net pen fish farms out of Pacific waters by the end of 2025. Work is apparently underway on transition planning, much overdue. And at the same time, DFO officials continue to receive, consider, and approve applications for production increases at existing farms. In Clayoquot Sound, for example, DFO has granted 3 farm production increases of 25 to 50%. A further 7 applications from the same company are under review by DFO involving increases in tenor size, investment in new pens, and production increases. Minister, my question for you is, can you tell the committee how you plan to meet the 2025 deadline to remove these open net fish farms from Pacific waters, as well as a real jobs plan for all those who are impacted?
est-ce que je peux dire à ma
What I can tell my colleague is that my government is determined to implement a transition plan that will be responsible for aquaculture, for open net aquaculture. We know that the salmon stocks at the Pacific are fragile, and their protection will have an positive impact over the longer term for the West Coast. We will continue working on the transition plan, but this plan will be responsible. It will be realistic, and it will protect Pacific salmon while providing workers support and also supporting communities. We need to continue having conversations with people working in the field. They're asking for conversations. As I said, these conversations are not always easy. They are very emotional. And for me, it's really important to make the best decisions possible.
So, Minister, will the 2025 deadline be met for the transition plan that you're talking about?
Les discussions continuent.
Discussions are underway with the different partners and with colleagues around the table.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll now go to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Minister, congratulations on your appointment and being appointed the newest Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and Canadian Coast Guard. I join many Canadian harvesters and anglers and support service providers in hoping you will provide or do better than the five predecessors appointed by your Prime Minister over the past 8 years. That record of failed appointments started off with Minister Tutu, who we barely got to know before he was replaced by Minister LeBlanc, who was chased from the portfolio by the conflict of interest in the clam scam scandal. Next, we had Minister Wilkinson, who said the Pacific salmon needed improved habitats, but then went on to defer for decades the implementation of Canada's first wastewater treatment standards introduced by a Conservative government. Then Minister Jordan put BC aquaculture workers on notice, but failed to provide a transition plan for the workers and their communities. The appointment of Minister Murray in BC sparked some hope that workers and harvesters in BC being put out of work by the government's policies might see some relief, but instead we see job losses and litigation. Minister, will you be different from your predecessors, or are you going to continue the sad legacy for Canadians and the jobs that rely on Canada's fisheries?
Ben, écoutez, ce que je peux vous
What I can tell you with everything you've enumerated is that we're going to do much better than what the Conservatives did. We won't do the same cuts that you did. So since we've been in power, we've continued to invest in ports for small vessels, try to rebuild with regards to scientific data. So we're going to continue. We'll continue to work with people in the industry.
Minister, your five predecessors have left a sad legacy behind. Why should we trust you, count on you to do any better? We've heard you say that you will listen more. To me, that's an indication that the previous ministers did not listen enough. Would you care to respond to that?
Pour moi, c'est important.
I think it's important, as I was saying, to work with industry stakeholders. I'd like to reassure my colleague, for 8 years I worked at CRA. So during those 8 years, we worked for Canadians. So I believe that I do have a good track record, and I have the trust of my colleagues, but also in the meetings that I have with industry stakeholders. And I talked about this, the fisheries, the processing sector. It's important to listen to stakeholders and to make the best possible decisions. Right now, times are tough with the warming of the planet, with climate change. So we need to find solutions. We need to find solutions together, not just criticism, but solutions, because this industry is important for us all here around the table.
And I agree that we do need to find solutions, and solutions are out there. Minister, aquatic invasive species pose serious threat to BC's waters. A 2023 provincial report stated that if invasive mussels are allowed to invade BC, new annual expenses for BC could reach $129 million per year for maintenance of infrastructure. For far too long, federal DFO funds for preventing the spread of aquatic invasive species have not been distributed equitably for Western Canada. Will you work with your officials to balance the allocation of DFO funds for aquatic invasive species and support protection of water and fish habitats in British Columbia?
OK. S'il y a un travail d'équipe.
Teamwork is being done with provinces. You're talking about invasive mussels. We're going to talk about green crab, other invasive species. There is an increased amount of maritime traffic, and this is putting our coastal areas at risk. And so we all need to work together to make sure. There's Asian carp. It's an invasive species as well. So we have to be able to manage all these issues. We cannot believe today that we're going to destroy an invasive species, but we do have to work together. We have to find solutions, and the solutions are not simple. They are complex and will require.
Mr. Part of the solution is prevention, and the federal government has not lived up to what's been requested by agencies. Madam Minister, The Cohen Commission report of 2012 told the previous government that timely and thorough scientific investigations were needed to determine the effects of BC salmon farms on wild Pacific salmon. Why did your government fail to ensure the completion of the Strategic Salmon Health Initiative that had already conducted years of work, and will you work with the Strategic Salmon Health Initiative partners to ensure that the science recommendation by Cohen 11 years ago is finally completed?
Écoutez, on a fait 9 études.
We conducted 9 studies in the Pacific, and if you would like to have further detail, I believe I can give the floor to the Deputy Minister.
Excuse me, I'd like to know why your department failed to follow through on the 4 phases with the Strategic Salmon Health Initiative. You've been in your position since the summer. Is that something you should have been briefed on?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Arnold. You're gone almost a minute over. I'll ask the department or the minister to respond in writing to the committee. We'll now go to Mr. Hardy for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll note that I'll try and free up time for one question from Ms. May. I want to say off the top that as Minister of our Revenue Agency, this minister was extremely helpful, extremely effective in dealing, with some of our constituents' issues. I have great confidence that needles will be moved as we move forward here on some of these issues. 2 questions. This committee came up with what I think is a landmark report in 2019, Sharing Risks and Benefits, all about the regime on the West Coast. Any quick reflections on that report, Madam Minister, and any thoughts as to where we might go next?
Je passerai la parole à la sous-ministre.
I'll give the floor to the Deputy Minister.
On a beaucoup apprécié.
We very much appreciated this report, and we conducted several activities following the publication of the report. A very important thing that was published is the survey on licenses in the sector. Then there were some suggestions made, some fears that there was some foreign ownership, and we found that there were very few foreign owners in the field, and we conducted a study as well on fisheries in the east and how it is managed, and recommendations east versus the west.
But I do have limited time, and we know this. We've heard this answer before. I'm interested in what's going to happen next, but perhaps there's a report coming out that will inform which way the ministry would like to go. Second question. This, after a couple of years of waiting on a study that Mr. Arnold has suggested, we are going to take up the issue of illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries. And this is almost half a question, too, for the Coast Guard, which maybe we can get into in the next hour. But, Minister, what would you have us think about as we put together our plan to bring in witnesses and talk about, the IUU fishery?
Écoutez, ce que je peux vous dire.
What I can say, and what it would be important to look at, is to see what concrete measures can be proposed by the committee in order to make sure that the industry can be well informed, whether it be with regards to fines, costs, linked to illegal fishery activity. What I'm often told is that when people are accused, the fines are so low, contrary to the profit gained by this illegal activity, that there's a lot of concern right now in the setting. There's a lot of black market activity on the wharves, and this is what is being told, what I'm being told from people in the sector also. And so we do need to work to be able to protect the fishing sector. And for me, the illegal fishery has no reason for to be or to exist. And you were talking about permits. This was brought forth to me as well. The fishing sector has improved, I believe, in the past years, whether it be the lobster, the crab industry. We've seen this in the markets. The price is high. And so right now, for succession, people are not able to have access to licenses. And this is the future of the sectors. The future. It's not true that a young person can go to a bank and borrow $5 million to buy a lobster fishing license or $20 million for a crab fishing license. So I'm being told this as well. Other people are working on this, so we have to be careful. We have to be able to protect our sector, and we're going to do this jointly with the fishing sector, with provincial governments, and with committees such as yours, with the recommendations that you will make.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, am I out of time? We have a little time left for Ms. May?
Yeah, 2 seconds, but that's not what I call sharing time.
Yeah, sorry, Liz.
We'll go on now to Madame Debienne for 2.5 minutes, please.
2 minutes et demie, c'est pas long.
2.5 minutes isn't a lot of time. Madam Minister, I'm trying to gather all of this in my mind. There's a critical situation that is expected for herring, mackerel, shrimp. The situation is quite dramatic. And also the seaweed sector. People are fishing in New Brunswick where there's no regulations. There's also the clam sector, fished in one sector of the bay. On the other side, they're not. And so there's a lot of irregularities, in particular in Quebec. And I was wondering, the fishers deplore that they have expertise, they're not being listened to, they're working on the ground, and they want to protect the resource more than all of us because it's their, it's how they survive. And so are you willing to have a sort of consultation table where fishers can provide their expertise or that they be, their opinions be taken into account? I'm thinking of the seaweed sector, but all the other sectors, they know the reality on the ground more than anyone. Are you open to this consultation? Well, first of all, what I have to say is that it's not true that there's no regulation in the seaweed sector. And I'd like to remind my colleague that I'm not the Minister of Fisheries of Gaspésie and Quebec. I'm the Minister for Canada. So, as I was saying, with regards to seaweed, seaweed is important because it does allow the fish to live, to nourish, to feed. And so we do have an interest, a common interest, in ensuring that the seaweed resource will be protected for generations to come. Well, can we hope that we'll listen to fishers in all these different sectors? Can we take into account their expertise during the decision-making process? Well, I can tell you that I've been listening to these people since 2015. I meet with fishers on a regular basis. I meet with them in my riding all the time, and I'm a voice for the sector and to bring what happens on the ground to Ottawa. I don't need to be explained how this works. I know. I live this on a daily basis. Well, do they have answers? Because right now, they don't know what to do. And what I'm hearing is that they are desperate. They are desperate that nobody's listening to them. Is there a probable fishery? Are there solutions? There are always solutions. Now, will it always be the solution that people will want? Because to say that the sector protected the resources, as I was mentioning, I went through the cod stock collapse. I used to see fishing vessels coming in the late fall, and collaborative work needs to be done, and regulations need to be implemented. Now, is this fun? No, of course not. It's not always something that is enjoyable, but we need to have discussions, difficult discussions, emotional discussions, but they will have a major impact in our communities. But for me, it's important to have these discussions, honest, frank discussions, to protect the resource for generations to come.
The end, a little bit over, but I wanted to see the Minister answer the question. I believe Mr. Backrack is going to speak next on behalf of the NDP party, and you're up for 2.5 minutes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And Minister, it's good to see you again. I met earlier this week with Chief Murphy Abraham from the Lake Babine Nation. And the Lake Babine Nation is in northwest BC. They've been working with British Columbia and Canada on a very ambitious reconciliation initiative. And at the heart of that initiative is an incremental fisheries agreement. Now, Lake Babine Nation has co-developed alongside your department a term sheet and a budget that would fund that incremental fisheries agreement. And they've been waiting since February of 2022 to hear back from your government as to whether funding will be forthcoming so that the goals and objectives in that incremental fisheries agreement can be realized. Those objectives include increasing the capacity of their fisheries department, developing fisheries management plans and recovery plans for wild stocks, and investing in infrastructure that's necessary for the management of Skeena wild salmon. So the question is really a simple one. Could you provide the committee with a sense of where this request is with your government and when Lake Babine Nation can hear back in terms of the success of the proposal that's before Cabinet?
Écoutez, ce que je peux vous dire, c'est
What I can say is that reconciliation is important for me. In fact, it's essential for our government to respect and recognize the rights of Indigenous communities. We have work that needs to be done. We're going to continue to work with our partners, with Indigenous communities, so that their rights will be respected, but also to work in order to keep the communication channels open with non-Indigenous communities. So we have work that needs to be done for awareness so that everything will go well. For me, the work needs to continue with the communities.
Thank you for that, Minister. The fact is that your department has worked very closely with Lake Babine Nation to develop what is a very compelling vision for increasing their capacity to manage the fishery under their Section 35 fisheries rights. Mm-hmm. And they've put together a term sheet and a budget that is very detailed, and they want to get to work as soon as possible. So the question, and perhaps it's through to the Deputy Minister, the question is, when can they expect an answer from your government as to the funding for that agreement that they've worked so hard to create?
We absolutely recognize the importance of a co-development, and we do go to the table with Indigenous partners on whatever agreement, whatever issue it is we're working with them on, to try to really move forward in a spirit of co-development. That being said, at the end of the day, governments make decisions, and we need time to make decisions on different things for the different communities that we're working with, and we're still working through that in this case and in many other cases.
Thank you, Mr. Backrack. We'll now go to Mr. Perkins for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister and officials, for coming. The first meeting I had with your predecessor shortly after I was elected in 2021, and I know that that you, Minister, are new to the role, as is the Deputy. But the first meeting I had in November 2021 with your predecessor in her office with the Deputy Minister and most of the ADMs for the department, I raised my concerns about the department's approach to the Elver fishery. At that time, I said there was a lot of poaching going on, and that the department wasn't enforcing their rules. And then in the following year, in 2022, the department received numerous complaints from the license holders with evidence of poaching going on in the rivers. When they phoned CNP to report poaching going on in the rivers, CNP asked the license holders if the poachers were First Nations, and if they were First Nations, they were told not to go and do anything. I warned the minister then that it would get out of hand, as people knew that this species with a $5,000 price tag per kilogram was now entering the black market, and that would bring considerable concern. We raised it again in the winter. I'm becoming known as Mr. Alver. Ask some of your colleagues from the Finance Committee. I think I spoke in the filibuster there for about an hour and a half on Elvers. Timothy Kerr, who runs CNP in Nova Scotia, in the spring, late winter of this year, said, we have enough resources to enforce the law. And in March, a month before the season opened, the department was getting daily reports of poaching already on the rivers, including my neighbors 2 minutes from my house. The department ignored it. It went on. The season started. Daily reports with photographic and video evidence were given to the department. It was out of hand. There were thousands of illegal poachers this year, and I had warned the minister that this would happen, and it happened. Ask the minister to do something. Ask the Liberal members to do something. They said, what are we supposed to do? What you're supposed to do is enforce the law, pick a river, bring in the RCMP as backup, and do the job. So the result of that was the minister's only response was to shut down the Elver fishery for the legal Elver harvesters, ending their season after 18 days, and allowing all the poachers to stay on the river. And do you know, ministers, the poachers were still on the river this summer. Nothing was done. Absolutely nothing was done by DFO. They were on private property. The RCMP wouldn't come and deal with it because they said CNP had not called them. Why is it that your department does not enforce the law?
Écoutez.
What I can tell you is that we are reviewing the management, and I do have to say that I agree with the decision that was made by Minister Murray at the time to put an end to the fishery, to the Elver fishery. I think this is a fishery that was probably not regulated beforehand. Work needs to be done, but what I'd like to tell my colleague as well is that at DFO, we're also there to apply the Act. We're not, we want things to happen according to the rules, and poaching is happening at all levels, not just in the Indigenous community, as it seems to be indicated, also in the non-Indigenous communities. So work remains to be done. There's awareness work that needs to be done in the field, and we need to establish rules.
Minister, and the thing is that the illegal poaching that's happened over the years, your department refused to enforce the law, resulted in criminal elements from the United States, from Quebec, from Ontario, from coming here and doing it, and they're still doing it, and you're not poaching it. And the same official in CNP said he had the same, said the same thing at the beginning of July, that they had enough resources to enforce the poaching in the lobster fishery, yet poaching in the lobster fishery went on all summer with virtually no arrest. Now, when I go back to the Elver fishery, it was so bad that the only river that DFO does science on, the East River in Chester, DFO pulled all the science from it because it was too dangerous. They wouldn't even protect that river to do the science. So I don't want to hear this department come out and say, we can't have an Elver fishery next year because we didn't do the science this year, because we didn't have the courage to protect the river that we do the science on. And
Thank
it
you,
wasn't
Mr. Perkins.
unregulated.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. You're gone over a fair bit on your time. I want to get to Mr. Hanley to close out this first hour of questioning.
Merci beaucoup. Et,
Thank you, Madam Minister. I'm very pleased to welcome you before the committee, and thank you to your officials as well. It's very important, given the importance of the fishery to the northern and Indigenous communities. The salmon fishery along the Yukon River.
Of northern fisheries to our northern and Yukon communities, I wanted to focus on Yukon River salmon. And as you may know, Yukon River salmon is in dire straits. earlier this fall at the Whitehorse Fish Ladder, only just over 150 salmon had made the ladder by mid-September, and the 10-year average is 850 for the same period. Also, according to the DFO's Yukon River Salmon Report, I'll quote some of it. Similar to previous years, 2019 to 2022, the return of Canadian origin Chinook salmon will not be large enough to achieve the spawning escapement objectives, nor provide for harvest opportunities in either Alaska or Canada. So I just wanted to ask you where Yukon salmon lie among the priorities of your mandate, first of all.
I can tell you that in my mandate, salmon is, in fact, emblematic for the West Coast. So for me, it's a priority that's important because there's an entire economy around salmon. Earlier, we were talking about the cultural issue on the East Coast. The same thing is true for the West Coast. It's cultural. I think it's important to work closely with the sector and also to work closely with the U.S. It's not easy, what we're hearing right now. And we have spent $750 million for a salmon strategy in the Pacific, but we're going to continue to work together to protect the species. We saw with the West Coast what's happening with drought, the difficulty around salmon, sometimes to go up the rivers. Then we have a work of cooperation in order to protect the resource.
Thank you. And I'm glad actually you mentioned two elements of what I was going to pose as further questions. One is the Pacific Salmon Strategic Initiative. I'd love to have a quick update from either you or Ms. Gibbons on the implementation of PSSI, particularly as relates to the Yukon the Yukon part of the funding.
I'll give the floor to the Deputy Minister.
Here I can get you more on the activities in the Yukon, but it's a very comprehensive strategy with a number of different pieces. We have habitat restoration is a really, really important piece here, and we're working with all kinds of groups to do that. There's obviously a very important Indigenous component, partnerships with Indigenous communities, given their interest in salmon. It's really a lifeblood for communities. Work on harvest transformation. So, there's a lot of interest, obviously, in recreational fisheries and salmon. So how do we work with that? We have hatcheries. We are building new hatcheries. So a whole bunch of different pieces. We have been accelerating the spending of the $700 million that the minister just mentioned. And I think we've spent about 74 in the first couple of years, and this year we're spending roughly the same. So it really is picking up at a very significant pace as we get the various building blocks in place.
Good. So the other part that you mentioned was our relationship with the United States and certainly with our friends, our U.S. friends. And with previous discussions with Minister Murray, which supported the idea of engagement with our U.S. friends on the state of salmon for the Pacific and northern species and the importance of refreshing our joint initiative. So I'm just wondering whether you would continue to support a formal engagement that will bring both federal governments and the relative Indigenous, local, state, and territorial governments together to talk about this crisis and look jointly for solutions.
Yes, I'd like to reassure my colleague. We're going to continue to work closely with the U.S. For me, this collaborative effort will allow us to win-win. We can also lose together, but I want us to win together. So it will be important for everyone to work together and to work closely together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanley, and thank you to our Minister. That concludes our first hour of testimony, so we'll suspend for a quick moment.
Mr. McDonald, if you could give me one moment to answer to Mr. Perkins, because he asked a question earlier, but I didn't have the time to answer, and I want to remind him that under Harper, they made huge cuts at DFO Canada, so to fight against unauthorized fisheries. So it'll be a pleasure for me to continue to invest in order to protect.
Point of order. I don't know why, when the minister's time is up, why, Mr. Chair, you're letting her go on with a nothing to do with anything to respond to something if I can't respond to her.
Just a moment, please. She did ask, could she respond to your earlier question?
I didn't ask a question about the Harper government, so it was
nobody
out of order.
said no. I don't control the questions. I don't control the answers. There's no different in
Well,
the
you
House
cut her off.
Commons.
She's now 5 minutes after her time, so I would ask that in the future we stick to the allotted time as posted in the notice of meeting. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
and we'll start the meeting on time as well in the future. So, Minister, again, Minister, thank you.
The time for you, for the answer.
Thank you, Minister. We'll suspend for a couple of moments now to let the officials join the table as well. Okay, so we'll try to get started. Welcome Mr. Adam Burns, Assistant Deputy Minister, Programme Sector, Department of Fisheries and Oceans, and as well Niall O'Day, Senior Assistant Deputy Minister, Strategic Policy, Department of Fisheries and Oceans. So I don't think there's another opening statement, but we'll go right to questioning. I believe Mr. Epp is up for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the officials for being here. I've got 3 short questions to start. First of all, who speaks for Canada at the Great Lakes Fishery Commission table?
Well, we have a commissioner there, a federal representative.
So the 4 Canadian commissioners.
Well, we provide, obviously the department provides advice for what the position is, and we work with the Secretariat extensively.
But it's the 4 commissioners that speak, right? As I understand right now, there are negotiations for a memorandum of understanding between the DFO and the commissioners.
Yeah.
Is the DFO prepared to sign a memorandum of agreement, as opposed to a memorandum of understanding?
I'm not sure of that's not an issue that I'm aware of, whether
Would one of the
we're in
other
agreement
officials-
or understanding that technical
One is binding
difference.
on the ministry, one is not. So are you prepared to sign a binding agreement with the commission?
I'm going to take that back.
Thank you. If you could table that
Yeah.
response, that would be
Yeah.
great. Finally, why won't the U.S. commissioners meet with the Canadian commissioners at the commission?
I can't speak for them, sir.
Could you provide an answer in writing?
I'm not sure I'll be able to give you any more than that. I mean, we're in extensive discussions on the business that we share with the Commission, and that is going very, very well, but I cannot speak for the American commissioners.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll turn the rest of my time over to Mr. Arnold.
4.5 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you for appearing here today. It's always good to hear from the officials. I believe this question will probably go to Mr. Pelche, but it may be Mr. Burns. We constantly hear from harvesters that are unable to access resources, unable to fish because of stock assessments not being done. And stock assessments not being done because of vessel maintenance problems, vessel breakdowns, or shortage of staff. This is a huge economic impact. It's a huge impact to the fishermen and processors that are losing their jobs. Surely these breakdowns and staff shortages can't be because of the billions of dollars that have been poured into the fisheries, Department of Fisheries and Oceans over the last 8 years. Why does DFO continuously fail in providing stock assessments that would allow fishermen to harvest a catch?
We certainly work very hard to ensure that we can do all the stock assessments that the harvesters rely on. We have had issues for sure, and we work through those issues as they arise. We're obviously working very hard on the broader fleet renewal strategy, and we have had new vessels delivered for including fishery science vessels for our stock assessments. Obviously, when we have problems with particular vessels, older vessels, for example, that are not yet replaced, we do everything we can to try to find a solution. So in some cases, that will mean taking another vessel and reprioritizing what we do, where.
You're referring to vessel issues, breakdowns and so on. But what about staffing shortages that we also hear about? Vessels aren't able to sail, and we're also relying on foreign countries to do stock assessments on Canada's fish stocks. Why, after 8 years, has this government failed to address these issues?
Well, we have a lot of international agreements with partner countries where we share ocean area and fish, both fish in those areas, or many countries fish in particular areas. So we do joint science with lots of different countries, given that fisheries are often a shared resource. And in terms of staff shortages, sir, we certainly are aware of the complements that we need, and we work really hard on staffing, and there's times when we don't have the full complement that we need to sail on a particular mission, but we really do a lot of planning, both in the Coast Guard for what is needed on that side and in DFO to try to have the staff that we need in the places where we need them.
Thank you. Another topic was just announced yesterday that the cod stock assessment has now been changed from critical zone to, I believe, caution. The Premier of Newfoundland referred to new historical data. Can you define what new historical data would be? I believe most people believe that historical data is not new. Can you describe not necessarily the cod situation, but what new historical data, and why wasn't it used 8 years ago?
So the change in the assessment of cod is based on a change in the model that is used to assess the stock.
Again, I said
and so that
new
includes,
historical data.
Yeah.
What is new historical data?
Well, I can't speak to the Premier's use of new historical data. Historical data is historical data, but it is the use of historical data in the model. Certain historical data, obviously the model is based on data, past data as well as current data. But the new model has some different data from the
Sounds
past.
like you can't answer that question. So the minister wasn't able to answer why the Strategic Salmon Health Initiative program that was started as a result of the Cohen Commission by the previous Conservative government, why did your department abandon that process and not complete the 4 phases that were recommended after so many years of work and research had gone into that program?
So
I would ask the officials to provide that in writing because we're gone way over time on the actual questioning for Mr. Arnold. We'll now go to Mr. Morrissey for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, Chair, to Ms. Gibbons, Deputy Minister. Ms. Gibbons, you as well as the senior most Associate Assistant Deputy Ministers in the department, are you aware of the growing concern on the East Coast within the lobster fishery, primarily of unreported cash sales?
Yes, I am aware.
So you
that
are
there
aware.
concerns,
So the
yeah.
department's aware.
Yeah.
How long have you been aware?
I've been aware that there are unreported sales, that there are illegal sales in fisheries since I joined. I mean, that is part of the business of regulating this sector. That's the reason why we have a conservation and protection officer contingent, because there is
And
illegal
what
fishing.
steps, briefly, has the department been doing to confirm if it is accurate?
We obviously, our first line of defense, of course, is to make sure that we enforce the Fisheries Act and that people who are fishing have licenses.
How many charges have been laid in relation to unreported cash sales of lobster on the East Coast?
I can't give you a number, a specific number.
Can
but
you give it back to the committee, provided to the committee?
I can talk to my team about that.
Okay, thank you. Because the fishery underpins the economy of coastal Atlantic Canada. And I hear it constantly. In fact, I was with the minister this summer where we both got an earful at the wharf on this particular issue. And I want to confirm if the senior-most officials in the department are aware of it. If they are aware of it, I take it you would be taking concrete action to correct it.
This is, I mean, the provinces regulate the sales, and so we do work with them.
Yes, but Ms. Gibbons, no. DFO regulates and documents the sale of lobster from the fisher to the buyer. It's the federal department's responsibility to document that particular transaction. The provinces license the buyer and they license the processor, but it's your responsibility to ensure that the documentation between the fisher and the buyer is accurate and totally reflects the catches that are being made. My next question is, and I want to follow up on my colleague, Mr. Perkins, but from a different angle. Recently, it's been in the media, certainly within social media, about the department sponsored through fisher organizations a lobster trap retrieval program in LFA 25, the Northumberland Strait, between PEI and New Brunswick. There was extensive lobster traps that was recovered in that process. This was after the season. They were still out. If it was still out after the season, would that gear be illegal?
I'll ask Adam Burns to answer that.
So when we retrieve gear through the Ghost Gear program, we first look at whether it's been reported as having been lost, which is a requirement of license conditions.
Okay, was there any gear in 25 reported lost before the retrieval program was conducted?
Absolutely, I'm sure there was. I don't know for a fact
Could you check
what
and
was
advise the
reported.
committee if there was reports of abandoned, of lost gear, and where and who reported the lost gear?
We would certainly be able to provide you the statistics on the reporting, but we have a very high level of reporting of lost gear. There is a fair amount that happens each season.
One of the issues, because I believe is paramount, various ministers have made the comment that conservation drives the department. and conservation is essential for the maintenance, stability, and growth of the fishery. And I'm referencing lobster here. And what irritated commercial fishers is that there was an extensive amount of traps retrieved that were landed and then DFO directed and paid for them to be returned to First Nations community in New Brunswick. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, I would have to look into the details of that specific situation.
Would you, and provide it back to the committee? And then if it was retrieved after, so is the process the same? If all gear that was retrieved was the actual original owner sought out and the traps returned to the original owner with no charges laid?
In instances, well, I can't speak to specific cases, but I can tell you that when we retrieve gear through the Ghost Gear program, we first look at the portion which can be identified. Not all of the gear can be identified in terms of who the owner is. We then look also at whether that gear had been reported lost, and then that information is provided to our conservation and protection staff for further action as appropriate, depending on the circumstances.
So could you provide to the committee in writing, following this, exactly what transpired with the retrieval of gear that was conducted a couple of weeks ago in LFA 25 between New Brunswick and PEI, and provide to committee what action was taken on the traps that was retrieved, and whether charges were laid as a result of them, or if how was those traps, where did they go after they were recovered?
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. We'll now
Chair,
go...
as long as I could get, it's clear, we're going to get that information?
We will provide you with a response and all of the information that we have available, yes.
We'll now go to Madam Debienne for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to our witnesses. We're very pleased to see you here again. I'm not sure who can answer, perhaps Mrs. Gibbons. Is there an update for the Fisheries Fund? Is there any money left in the fund, and how much? Are you able to provide that information? Yes, I do have the number. There's money left, and there was an extension. You're talking about the Quebec Fund? Yes, there was an extension. And we will accept requests up until March for a 2-year period still. I think we are at 55% of the money available of the original budget that's still in the fund and available to invest in the future. Okay. I'm now going to address this question to Mr. Pelletier or yourself. I had highlighted the fact that the wait time with regards to grievances was extremely long, and there was a lot of psychological distress linked to this for people who are heavily impacted. And you had announced that there would be a review of the procedures, but we still receive calls and people say that things are not moving and are at a standstill. Could you tell us if anything's going to happen soon for people who have been waiting for 7 years, some of them who have waiting for a settlement for their work grievances to be resolved? I know that there are some complex cases. All departments have some complex cases, and I cannot speak to the timeline of specific cases, but I am in continuous discussion with the Commissioner, with the management team on cases, and we do have an internal committee that will look at complex cases in order to try to find solutions as quickly as possible for employees. I also have an ombudsman who's there to try to solve HR issues, and it's another avenue to resolve these concerns. Yes, but I'm coming back to this situation, and people are listening. So I hope that you're able to tell them that 7 years is too much, and that it should be a much shorter time. For many people, their life revolves around their job. And for many Canadians, for most Canadians, their job is an important aspect of their life. And then following important, there's huge psychological distress, loss of a house, a divorce, family issues. There are really severe consequences to this, and people are waiting for a solution. So I would like for you to be able to tell them today that they can at least have hope. Now, the Fisheries Fund, you said 55% is still available. Are you waiting for requests between now and March, or is there a specific direction that is being taken? Well, there are different things that are being supported. We are putting the emphasis on the implementation of technologies on board technologies that are greener, that are more sustainable for fishers and for the environment. And this is something that interests Canada and Quebec and people in this sector. So we have objectives, and they continue to be relevant. So do you foresee support? We spoke about this last year. Some people have a difficult financial situation. People have experienced closures in their sectors. Some plant workers are not eligible for EI. Do you think these people could be supported during the shift to an alternative fishery, or that new licenses be awarded for, I don't know, redfish or something else? These people are waiting for their lives to be reorganized, but they've lost a lot of money and income. So are you thinking about any type of support, financial support for these people? Well, in difficult situations, we always try to look at the available resources, what are elements of a solution, and it's different for different people in the sector, of course, and we'll continue. We'll continue to do that with regards to the shift. Do I have time left? So in the fishing sector, it's a crisis. Do you recognize that, yes, we're in a fisheries crisis, or is it only people working in the sector that are talking about it that way? Well, there are many fishing sectors where things are going well, where the revenues and the catches are very good. For the shrimp fishery, it's a widespread fishery. There's a large number of fishers that earn their living from this resource, so it's not in a crisis throughout the country. As the minister was saying, climate change and other factors have an impact, and all of this has an impact, has an effect. It's critical in some regions, of course.
Go on to Mr. Small. Oh, no, Miss Barron. I'm sorry. Miss Barron is next, Mr. Small, not you at all. Ms. Barron, for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome to everyone who's here. My first question is on Vancouver Island in my riding and in surrounding communities as well. I heard from salmon trollers in the summer that the start of their fishing season was significantly delayed, and at the very last minute, almost totally without notice, or consultation. And you know that I support, as well as coastal communities and fishers, the conservation and protection of wild salmon, but it's this exact chronic and repeated lack of consultation and consideration that alienates the department from the fishers that it should be working closely with. And can you please explain the rationale behind the decision in this case and what consultation has been done with fishers?
I've certainly heard similar concerns about the time between the announcements and the start of the fisheries and the lack of advance notice and this year, and that is obviously a concern. Just say in general, on the West Coast and you know, with salmon, as a case in point, we have these very detailed fish management plans on a regional basis, and we do extensive consultations before we complete them. Like we consult with people to develop the plans, just because of salmon in particular, you know, being a resource that is the many different species, the fact that it's in the ocean, it's up rivers, just the area it covers is huge. And of course, stocks are not mostly in great shape. So we just spend a lot of time on those consultations and the development, and sometimes we kind of run up against the clock in terms of the opening.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbons. I appreciate and agree, of course, with as I said, the conservation and protection of wild salmon, but can you explain why these fishes, why I'm hearing from so many salmon trollers in area F and G who are saying that they did not receive this consultation that you are talking about, who received very short notice, and therefore it limited the amount of time that they were able to be out on the water and providing livelihoods for their families and communities?
You know, the plans that I see include an extensive consultation component, so I can't speak to every single community, and you know, you're saying that there are some who were not included. Certainly from where I sit, my team does very extensive on-the-ground engagement on salmon fisheries. So happy if you have more specific examples you'd like to share, happy to look into that.
Yes, that's exactly what I was just thinking, that we can continue this conversation. I could provide you with specifics in the hopes that the people who have been impacted can have their voices heard and have some solutions in particular so that this does not be repeated. The other question that I have is around the crab fishing season in Newfoundland and Labrador saw a severe collapse in prices. It led to lost work, and many people were unable to qualify for the seasonal employment insurance that allows them to feed their families throughout the off-season. And at the same time as all this was happening, to make matters worse, the government changed the EI eligibility criteria to make it even harder for many of these fishers and those impacted to be able to qualify. We wrote a letter, myself and Daniel Blakey, who's the NDP critic for employment and workforce development, to the minister, asking if the minister will be supporting the FFAW's emergency economic support proposal, and would like to get your thoughts on the matter, please.
We did extend the season so that harvesters could get out and catch their quota. So that certainly, you know, lots of back and forth with the harvester community to really make sure that we were able to support them in given the late start to the season.
Thank you. Another question that I have is around, there's evidence that Alaskan fisheries are catching hundreds of thousands of fish bound for Canadian rivers. In fact, Alaska has become the biggest harvester of BC wild salmon populations, even as our stocks are declining. And my question is, and I've asked this before, my colleagues have asked this before, and I'd like to have a clear answer around what the department's going to do between now and 2028, when the treaty will be renewed to protect wild salmon who are in crisis right now.
So we certainly have multiple venues for engaging with the U.S. on salmon. We have a Pacific Salmon Commission, which, you know, goes through extensively harvest in various areas. And this is a point that we do engage, the Yukon situation in particular, we engage extensively with the U.S. on that and really stress the importance of conservation and the fact that this is a shared resource and we really do need to manage it in a very integrated way.
Thank you. Will anything happen between now and when the treaty is renewed then?
Absolutely.
Can we
We're
expect
in
any
constant
action?
engagement. We're in constant engagement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looping back.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. You're right on the 6-minute mark. Good timing.
Thank you.
I'll now go to, originally it was Mr. Small, it went to Mr. Perkins, back to Mr. Small. Now I believe it's up to Mr. Perkins again. So, you know, you got to give up dancing, right?
We're just following the Liberal lead of sharing how you share and giving all that notice to how you
Yes,
share with
yeah.
everybody. Thank you, Deputy. Deputy, some questions just around some of the planning on how to fix this issue of Alver enforcement. If I could start with, part of the challenge, I think, is traceability. How do you actually trace this? So can you tell us, because once it's out of the water, just for people watching, once it's out of the water, how do you know who caught it and where it came from, and how does a buyer know, or how does somebody at an airport shipping know that this was legal or illegal? Can you let us know what DFO is doing to update how we could better have better traceability in the Alver fishery?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we're currently engaged in a very extensive review of the Alver fishery. Everything from allocation to management, and as part of management, we are considering the question of traceability. You know, we're certainly not alone on this. CBSA has a role, the province has a role, but I can tell you that in September we had a team go to Maine because Maine did, given the similar kind of dynamic in that fishery in that state. They brought in a regime to try to have better controls over the sort of, you know, from the river to export, including a license regime and a card tracking. When people were selling, it would have to be tracked against the cards that they hold, scanned, that kind of thing. So it's a very, very interesting regime that Maine has worked through, and it was a very done in pieces. They didn't achieve it all in 1 year, but we certainly are taking inspiration from what they have done and really looking at every aspect of how we manage the Alver fishery.
Great. My understanding, though, was that, and there were, I know DFO did surveillance at the Halifax airport, but that, you know, it's sort of like whack-a-mole, and a lot of them ended up going through, I think, live seafood facilities at Toronto Airport, where I don't believe, unless I'm wrong, that DFO has any enforcement people there. Does DFO have enforcement people at Pearson Airport through the international live seafood shipping stuff?
Well, this would be a CBSA responsibility.
CBSA, not
it's a CBSA responsibility, yeah. And CBSA is doing enforcement of this, for sure.
Okay, because a lot of it was going...
catching.
A lot of it was going through Toronto, so I never read or heard of any sort of arrests or anything coming out of the illegal export of illegally caught Elvers out of the Toronto airport. So maybe you could get back to the committee if there were some instances with that in writing.
CBSA is very aware of where the activity is. I think that's a point of discussion, yeah. For sure.
Whether it's this issue, because we've had some quota cuts where DFO has transferred some of the quota from legal licensed Elver fishers to First Nations, and we've had some issues around the lobster fishery and issues about willing buyer, willing seller. And my understanding from something I think I saw in the spring was that for all fisheries, DFO has about something like $175 million set aside over a number of years for willing buyer, willing seller. Are you considering more cuts to the legal licensed Elver fishers in Atlantic Canada as we approach the season next year?
We are absolutely looking at allocation of license and how we meet the interests of rights holders, Indigenous rights holders. The specifics of Elver licenses and what will happen there, you know, that's something that I'm not in a position to give you details on that. But we are absolutely looking at allocation. As you know, willing buyer, willing seller is the predominant approach that we use. We don't always use it. It's not always applicable, but we really do strive to use it to the extent we can.
On the issue of, just slipped my mind, on going forward in management of the Elver fishery, we have a number of licensed eel harvesters, some of whom have said to me in meetings that they think it would be better for the entire stock because if basically the adult eel fishery ended and those licenses were converted to Elver fisheries to allow those eels to go back to the Sargasso Sea and reproduce. Is the department giving any consideration on converting the eel licenses to Elver licenses in order to have as part of replenishing or allowing for the growth of the stock?
I mean, I think just generally we look at the conservation objectives for every stock, and certainly eels, they are a listed species under the Species at Risk Act, and so there is we consider for situations like that just a range of different measures to ensure the conservation of the stock. The specific transfer of license, again, that's a very specific question that
Could you get back in writing in it? I think I'm out of time, but if you could get back in writing to the committee, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, you were way over time, but I understood from my paper that it was going to be shared with another member, but that didn't happen, so that's on you. We'll now go to Mr. Cormier for 5 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you. For Mrs. Gibbons and Mr. Burns, in my region here in New Brunswick, we have a regional office in Moncton, and also in my riding, there's a Tracadie office, and there are many scientists, a lot of civil servants, a lot of members of your team. Do you trust these people when they send you files for decision-making, for example, on the opening or the closure of a fishery? In the department, we have some people who are highly skilled in different fields. So our scientists are people who manage resource protection measures, experts on small vessel ports, and advice is provided for myself or the minister, and of course, there's always an exchange and a discussion on files. Most advice will arrive, and I will have questions for clarification. Thank you.
Opening of the zone for halibut 45-47. Were you guys agree that this zone should be reopened?
Votre question, c'est pour savoir.
So your question is to know what debate happened? Did you agree in Ottawa, in your office, with the reopening of these two fishing zones? Did you agree? The role of the public service is to provide advice, and once a decision is made, we accept the decision. For Mr. Burns, did you agree with the reopening of zones 4 and 5 and 4 and 7 for halibut? I think his answer will be the same as mine, but go ahead. Well, no. I'm asking this question because these two zones, studies were done for almost 3 years to reopen these zones, and this year the recommendation from the local Moncton office from the scientists after almost 2 years of study on these two zones was to reopen these zones. Unfortunately, at the last minute, your office recommended to not follow the local recommendation and to close these zones. And then we had to intervene and to see why. the reasons. There might have been too much bycatch in these two zones. The season was ended. There was almost no bycatch. So what I'd like to know, Mrs. Gibbons and Mr. Burns, is why each time that decisions are sent to Ottawa by regions, there always seems to be an issue and questioning, even after your own scientists and even after your own civil servants make recommendations in the sense of reopening the zone, and then you seem to oppose that. So how do you want the industry to have any type of confidence in these decisions? I'd like to have an answer, please. Well, it's one department, so we have experts in the regions, we have experts in Ottawa, here in Ottawa, in the national office, and we use all types of decision-making processes. Mrs. Gibbons, your own reports have recommended for 3 years to reopen these fisheries. So why, at your level, did things change? Your own employees. Well, I am one entity with my employees in a region. We're not divided. It's not as if the region is a separate department that recommends something. The debate is not ended up until everyone has participated in the discussion. Everyone has brought their expertise. And that's the way it works in every department for every issue. Unfortunately, I don't agree with your answer, but in any case, I'm going to change and ask another question. Mr. Pelletier, I'm very happy to see you here. Mr. Pelletier, if we talk about the ice breaking in the bay during the next snow crab fishery, are you ready? And are discussions underway with different associations so that during the next season we can actively start our contracts in place to have different tools necessary to reopen our ports? Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yes. Well, I can't tell you if the contracts are in place or not, but we are as ready as we were during the previous years for the Atlantic region that manages that sector. They have all the mechanisms in place in order to make sure that we will be able to do the ice breaking as required. Thank you. I hope so. Thank you. Hope we'll be ready. Is that it for my time?
A bit over. We'll now go to Madame Debienne for 2.5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you. I'm going to add on to the position of my colleague, Mr. Cormier, on the difficulty sometimes that is experienced in the regions, whether it be your employees or the fishers, that read in real time what's happening, and they are there on the ground, and sometimes it's hard to understand why their opinion isn't really taken into account. We did a study on foreign investment not too long ago, and some witnesses said that knowledge in the fishing industry was in danger because of foreign investment was endangering the sector, and there wasn't enough succession planning. So how are you going to ensure that there will be a succession of the skills transmission from one generation to the next? No one wants to pay to work. Everyone wants to earn a living. And also we spoke about community licenses that are mostly for Indigenous people, but they would like for non-Indigenous people to be able to benefit from community licenses that would at least allow us to retain a certain economic interest and economic balance in local communities. I'd like to hear you speak to that. Thank you. Succession is a very important issue. I was at agriculture, and it was important for agriculture as well when Mrs. Bibeau was a minister. When we talk about the dairy farmers, for example, to enter into that sector, it's extremely expensive to buy a farm, any farm in general, and license prices are extremely high in the fishing sector, and so it's really difficult for a young person or anyone to purchase one. So this subject concerns the minister. She's discussed this with us ever since she arrived. I think she's seeking out ideas. She is willing to hear outside ideas, and she will provide advice.
First one today. We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes, please. 2.5, 2:42.
Thank you, Chair. My question is around, I'm wondering, perhaps, sorry, Ms. Gibbons, you can clarify around the Dene Nation and their coordinated efforts with the Canadian Coast Guard and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. Specifically, are you aware that until April this year, the department was funding a fisheries coordinator with the Dene Nation, and that your department has since cut funding for this important role?
I can't speak to that specific funding. I know we have programs that would support that kind of function in a First Nation, and we try to portion that funding so that all nations, all communities that are interested in having access are able to access to some funds. So I'm not sure the specifics of that. We can come back to you on that if you'd like.
Yes, please. I have concerns that have been brought forward, given the importance of the role of fostering local knowledge, having people on the ground to conduct DFO work with the community, building trust with the communities that they rely on. It seems problematic, to say the least, that this role would be eliminated without thorough consultation with the Dene First Nations. My other question, Ms. Gibbons, is around sea lice in open net fish farms. I'm curious, just building off my previous questions to the minister, we know that sea lice is highly problematic, especially dangerous to migrating juvenile salmon who are most vulnerable. Unfortunately, we've seen Cermak open net salmon farms in Baden Point granted a near 50% biomass increase in 2022, despite evidence that's been brought to my attention that they may have been in breach of their license conditions, despite evidence that they may have been in breach of their license conditions due to excessive sea lice. And I'm curious if you could please answer if Cermak has ever breached license conditions. Has any license issued to Cermak ever been amended to allow for higher lice limits? And have they ever been fined or otherwise sanctioned for breaching lice limits?
I can come back to you with details as appropriate. What I would say on sea lice, just more generally for the committee's interest, is that we are starting a full scientific assessment process of sea lice in aquaculture in BC. Impacts of sea lice.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll now go to Mr. Bragdon for 5 minutes or less, please.
No, it's Mr. Small.
Oh, you switched it up.
I switched
Okay.
that.
Over to Mr. Small for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question is to Ms. Gibbons. Stakeholder groups like the MFU, the PEIFA, and UFCA in the Maritimes are quite concerned that the rights and reconciliation agreements that are being negotiated secretly and without any transparency. Is there any chance that these stakeholders, all stakeholders, can be represented at the table during these negotiations?
I think this is an issue. Fish harvesters and Indigenous communities are fishing side by side with each other in their communities. And we know that there is a great interest on the part of non-Indigenous harvesters on what the government is negotiating. And so we certainly try to work on that education and discussion piece.
Thanks, Ms. Gibbons. But you just said that both Indigenous and non-Indigenous share a resource, work side by side. Why why are non-Indigenous not sharing in the consultation process?
There are discussions about what we are doing. Absolutely, we do consult with the non-Indigenous communities, fish harvester communities and associations on what we are doing in general. I've had discussions myself on that subject, so there are constant conversations.
the concerns that I'm bringing to you are based on conversations that I've had as recently as 2 hours ago with these stakeholder organizations in the Maritimes. Why are these agreements not being published in the Royal Gazette per the requirement laid out in Bill C-68?
These are agreements that I'm maybe turn to. I'm not sure if one of my colleagues has more to add on this, but the agreements that we have with Indigenous communities are nation-to-nation agreements, and so they would be subject to that the sort of protocol in that context.
So, is it a policy decision, or is it based on legal basis that these negotiations are strictly nation to nation and not bringing in all stakeholders?
We're formed by various things in our interactions with Indigenous communities, really founded fundamentally on the rights that they have, the constitutional rights that they have.
So there's no policy currently that you're working off in the development of these RRAs?
As I said, they're legal. These are nation to nation, and in that context, we respect that nation to nation construct.
Do you respect the rights of stakeholders that have had a certain level of access to the resource? Do you not? Why do you not want to negotiate with those stakeholders? And in the case of Elvers, for one, and the whole industry is watching what's going on with Elvers, and they're nervous. You've made them extremely nervous because 14% of their quota was confiscated, and there were no negotiations with no regard for willing buyer or willing seller. This is not coming from me. This is coming from the people that are involved in that industry, and they're concerned. What are you going to do about it?
We always have consultations with industry before we open fisheries. We have consultations on changes. We have consultations on allocation of quota. So
my last question is a brief one, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask, either official can answer this one. Do you respect the work that this committee does?
Of course.
Do you respect the reports that come out of this committee?
Yes.
So last year we put out a report with a recommendation that Canada match the Americans' mackerel quota, and it was completely disregarded. There was no dissenting report. It was a unanimous report. Why was that recommendation not followed? And did you have any consultations with the Americans on that? And just a brief 30 seconds.
I believe
or less.
the response to the committee on your mackerel report is pending, and we expect it to be made available to you shortly. We are constantly in discussions with the U.S. on the management of resources like mackerel, which across the borders.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Turn over to Mr.
5 minutes are up, but he gone over, actually. We'll finish off with Mr. Kellaway for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and I think I'm the last questioner between you and Emil. But what I want to focus on actually are two things. First is the Canadian Coast Guard College, which is located in Sydney and is an absolute jewel in Cape Breton, but for Canada as well in terms of training men and women across this country from coast to coast to coast. And I want to look into something that I receive a lot on locally, but also provincially too, where we have the Canadian Coast Guard College and we have the cadets. I hear often from industry, from Indigenous folks and communities and leaders in Indigenous communities, and also a fair amount of times I've heard from a safety perspective of the need to look at more of a presence of Coast Guard vessels actually in the Coast Guard or the vicinity of Sydney. And I'm wondering, is that something that perhaps is being looked at with partners, or is it something that we could look at doing a deep dive on, because it is something that has consistently come up and I think is worthy of a real tangible discussion. That's one question. I'll try to get my other question in and then let people answer. Elver's been brought up a lot today with respect to the last couple of years and the lawful actions of quite a few people. And you talked about going to Maine, and you talked about looking at some of their best practices. And I am wondering if you can dive in just a little deeper as to some other best practices that we may have learned from that trip, i.e. regulation changes, i.e. fines that are actually meaningful and impactful that would persuade someone or have them think twice about doing it. So for those folks at home, my understanding is that a 500 milliliter jar of peanut butter, if you think of that, and put Elver's into that jar of peanut butter, would get you $5,000 illegally. So I'm wondering if you could speak to the other measures on the Elver file that we may be looking at from our mining experience, but also from other research that you've done. Thank you, Chair.
They take the peanut butter out. Mr. Chair, I hope the Parliamentary Secretary will permit me just a very quick correction on something I said earlier, if that's okay. On eels, I believe I used the wrong verb. Eels are assessed as by the Committee on Species at Risk as threatened and not listed, just to be clear on that. Mr. Kellaway, we certainly have looked at all aspects or are looking at, I should say. There's still quite a bit of work underway, and we're really trying to work very, very intensively, given that the fishery, there's the expectations around 2024. So, looking at the regulatory regime, for example, and that would include fines assessed. That would include, things that are prohibited, activities that are prohibited. So certainly looking at that and, taking inspiration from the main case in Elver, just because it is so relevant and proximate. But certainly other things that are done in other countries with species that are similar to this, I think is something that we are looking at. On the Coast Guard, of course, I'll turn to the Commissioner.
Thanks for the question, and thanks for your kind word about the college. Having attended there more than 38 years ago now, I take particular pride on the very essential work that they do to support the fleet of the future. As far as more resources around Cape Breton, through the National Shipbuilding Strategy, we have a new lifeboat at Louisbourg Station, and much more capable than the one we used to have. And part of the fleet renewal plan, too, is to have a dedicated training vessel at the college that is yet to be built, but it's in our plan. So that's going to be more resources available there. And we always station a large asset just off Cape Breton for Northeast Scotia. We call it the search and rescue zone. So we're very mindful of our presence everywhere. But I'm happy to report that the new lifeboat that we've been getting from to shipyard are extremely efficient, and the crew is very proud in operating them.
Thank you, Mr. Kellaway. That concludes today's allotted time. I will apologise to Ms. Barron for starting early. Apparently, we did check the clock here in the room, and it is actually 3 minutes faster than everybody else's clock. But I will remind everybody it is on you to be here in time, because I'd like to start on time regardless. And as well, if you're participating on Zoom, you're expected to sign in 15 minutes prior to the meeting for sound checks and everything else to be done timely. So again, we will try and adhere to the exact time instead of the time on the wall, but they're supposed to be fixing the clock for us. So next meeting should start exactly on the right time, because it'll be all fixed. And again, I want to say thank you to all the staff, clerk, all the officials that made this meeting possible, including, of course, the translation team and the table staff. Meeting adjourned.